I think that there's something that those of us who've had children really do have in common, and that is, you know, this caring for kids. Our guests today, at one point in their lives, put their children in a lot of danger before the children were even born. They are all recovering drug addicts who abused drugs while they were pregnant. And you know, you hear about don't have a cup of coffee, don't smoke a cigarette. What about drugs? This is Leslie Culver. Leslie's first two children were born addicted to drugs. Things were so bad when her third child was born. You'd think she'd have learned by this, but she stopped to get a fix on the way to the hospital when she went to deliver the baby. This is Deneen Hill. Deneen worked as a prostitute to support a drug habit, not that unusual. Was unusual when she found that she was pregnant, and she continued to prostitute while pregnant to get drugs. This is Jessica Wagner. Jessica is pregnant now, as you can tell. Not too long ago, after years of doing drugs, Jessica thought it was time to end it all. It was just hopeless. So she tried to overdose on drugs, even though she knew at this point that she was not only killing herself, she was carrying her second child. Leslie, let's start with you. As I said, why take drugs during a third pregnancy when two babies have already been born addicted? What happens with that?
At the time that I was pregnant and carrying my children, I knew no other way of life. I was a drug addict. I thought I would always be one, and that's what I maintained. I knew no other way. Drugs were my life, and in turn it became a part of my children's life.
Tell us a little something about you and about your addiction, if you will.
I started at a very early age. I was about 13 when I started using heroin, and I remained using heroin.
Bad family life?
No, very good family life. I was raised normally. I have a middle-class mother and father.
Where'd you get heroin at 13 years of age?
I had moved out of my house, and my boyfriend at the time supplied me with all my drugs, and that's where I began. And I didn't end. The only times I would stop was when I would become part of the judicial system, or I was forced to. It was never on my own will.
Wouldn't you think if a 13-year-old moved out of the house that a family would go crazy? I mean, I would. How'd your parents react to this?
My mother at the time, I had a stepfather, and it was kind of a mutual agreement. They paid all of my bills and that, and kept in close contact with me, but I was really rebellious, very rebellious. They couldn't have told me anything different.
And they obviously didn't want a daughter to go away with a guy when she was 13.
No, they didn't, but there was no way of stopping me. I had my mind set, and I was very strong-willed even at an early age, and that's what I was going to do, and that's what I did.
All right, and you got pregnant twice?
Yes. I got pregnant the first time when I was 20, and my daughter was born addicted to heroin. I became pregnant again when I was 24. And this baby was born addicted to both heroin and methadone. At the time in my second pregnancy, I was afraid they would take my child, so I went and got on methadone, which is legal, thinking that that way my child would be okay. And she was born addicted to both. I wanted to correct you on one thing. My third child was born clean. It was my first two.
On the way to the hospital, you had a fix?
But that was not with my third child. That was with one of my first children. Yeah.
A prison record?
Yes, extensive prison record. I was in prison twice, the first time 3 years and the second time about a year and a half.
Anything in prison help you with the drugs?
Oh, no, there was nothing. I did drugs in prison. You know, there was no difference except I was kept there. But I still used drugs.
You could get drugs in prison?
Oh, yeah, they're definitely there.
Deneen, a prostitute while pregnant?
Yes, I was.
Did the guys know it?
Yes, they did.
Nobody cares?
Nobody cared.
Tell us about you, a little bit about your story and the story of your addiction.
I started using crack as my choice of drug, and I started using in a bad depression, I feel.
When you were how old?
I was 21. And I just used it.
And there was a rock bottom point?
Yeah, after living on the streets for so many months and never getting any help, you know, I just got tired. I was real tired.
But the drugs, when you're pregnant, I mean, doesn't everybody see those ads about how the mother has to be in good health and all of that? Is it that it didn't matter?
I think I blocked it out my mind. I didn't.
Also, when you're pregnant, you know, and if you're addicted before you become pregnant or after, you don't have control of your thinking. I mean, you lose it. You know, the whole thing is drugs. And you don't think rationally. You know, you don't think this is going to do this to my baby.
What was the rock bottom, Denise?
Sleeping at bus stops. People would stop and just give me money because they were tired of seeing me sit there so long trying to make money in my condition.
And they would just put money on you
They
while
would
you're
just-
asleep. Jessica, what about you? You started with pot. You lived on the streets.
I moved out of my house when I was about 14 years old, off and on. My parents are alcoholics, and they're very violent alcoholics. They abused me emotionally and physically as a child, and I started using drugs when I was 14 to escape the pain. I would leave home and I'd get loaded, and the only way I would go home was if I was high, so I didn't feel them hit me or yell at me or tell me I was bad. And I continued to use until I was 17 years old, and I got pregnant when I was 17 and a half with my first son. He's 2.5 now. I stayed clean for about, you know, almost all of my pregnancy with him, but, you know, off and on, if somebody would offer me drugs without the baby's father around or whatever, I would take it, because I was jealous because he was using the whole time I was pregnant, and I felt I was missing out.
He could use and you couldn't because you were pregnant.
Yeah, and it was my obsession and my disease, because when you're an addict, you have a disease. You're obsessed with using. And my son was born when I was 18 years old. When I got out, as soon as I came home from the hospital, I started using the day I came home. And I used until February of this year, and I went into a detox, and I stayed clean for about 30 days, and I started smoking pot and doing drugs again, because when I got out of detox, my parents offered to take care of my son, but they didn't want to take care of me. They didn't want me there around the house at all.
Is it the same? Are your parents still alcoholics? I guess one is always an alcoholic, but are they in a state of recovery?
Well, they're in a state of recovery, somewhat court-ordered, but they don't work any of their 12 steps.
They don't work their program?
No, they don't work
Were
their
you a
program.
call girl also?
Yes, I was.
Prison?
No.
No prison.
Never been to jail.
How many of you prison? 2?
Just me.
Just you?
I mean, I would go to prison for a night, and that's it. I did things that could have put me there, but I never got caught.
Okay, we have 3 young women who have a disease. They are addicts, and yet there's not programs, there's not places to help these people, and also questions we might want to ask them so that we can possibly understand what this disease is all about. Let's take a break. You'll ask some questions, I will too, and we'll be right back.
Logo in. Stand by to roll tape 4. Logo in. And roll. Fade. Sound.
We're talking about women who are addicted while they are pregnant to drugs. Our guests today are all recovering, right? This is Jean McAllister, and she's a lady who has set up a program. Were you yourself an addict, Jean?
Yes, I'm a recovering person also.
Okay, she has set up one of the only programs in the country for women who have this problem.
Hi, Sally. I would like to know where the father of these babies are, if they stayed with you, if they left you or they didn't care. Did they work? What happened to them?
Do we know who they are? In each case, Leslie, you were with somebody, right?
Yes, the father of my oldest child has her. The father of my newborn has never even seen the baby. He doesn't even know she was born, and I don't know where he is today.
What about you, Deneen?
The father of my baby lives where I live, but he doesn't know that I had a baby by him. Actually, I didn't know who my baby's father was until my baby was born. And then it's like the proof is in the pudding.
How? How come?
My baby looks just like the man that I know of my father.
Okay. And what about you, Jessica?
The father of my baby was in recovery with me in the beginning, and he went back out and used, and I never told him I was pregnant.
Do any of you get to keep your children? You said you've been addicted and their children were born addicts. I mean, in the hospital, do they have any programs to help you at the hospital?
There was nothing. When my two children were born addicted, the only thing they wanted to do was to take them from me and place them elsewhere.
There's very few places that that deal with this problem at all. I think that we have one of the 5 programs in the whole nation that deal with women and their children. And the hospitals are just becoming aware of the addiction of babies, and what they do now is remove the babies, detox the babies, and then give them back to the mothers.
So the children are living with you now?
Yes, at this time.
My baby is. The other two still don't.
I would be interested to know if you had practiced any kind of birth control. I mean, you know, if you seem so young, that was just that it was never
I never thought of it. It was never any thought.
There are some drugs, excuse me, but there are some drugs that act as a natural birth control, and so the women are not used to having a period. They're not used to, they don't get pregnant, and so a lot of them come in and they don't even know that they are pregnant because they're not used to having periods.
So there are some drugs that keep you from having your period, therefore you would never know if you were pregnant.
Right.
Some drugs that...
Were any of the father addicts to any of the kids that were born?
My baby's father's a drug addict.
All of you are shaking your head.
Yeah.
All of the men involved were all also addicts.
Yes.
I wanted to ask Leslie, you said in prison that you had drugs. Where did you get the money to buy them?
It was brought in through visiting and that.
You mean friends would bring you money or friends would bring you drugs, or both?
Both.
Does, Jean, when a woman, there's a thought that something about drug addiction is hereditary. If these mothers and the fathers were both addicts, does the child stand, I don't want to say a good chance, it's a bad chance of being an addict also?
Yes, I believe that. I believe if the parents don't get into recovery, that there's a good chance. I don't know about hereditary. There's some studies that prove that, but I don't think anybody is sure. But I do know that if they live in a home where there's drug use, that the children are going to be, and we need to address this issue.
I want to ask Denise, is she still on drugs?
No, today I'm a recovering drug addict.
All of our people who are here are recovering, we hope.
I'd like to know if a woman gets pregnant while she is taking drugs, what are the chances of the child being addicted if she stops now?
Well, I stopped using drugs at 6 months, and my baby he was born clean by the grace of God, and it was a miracle because I used heavily.
I would like to ask what proportion of prostitutes do become pregnant, and if they do they all abort?
What about it, Jean?
Don't have the answer to that. We deal with drug abuse, and most of the women that I've worked with have their children and usually try to keep them, and they're in a process of getting well and getting clean. So they usually overcompensate with their children and try to get their other children back and they all want to be normal.
Jessica, how far along are you right now? Because you're pregnant now?
Yes, I'm 5 months pregnant.
Okay. Are any of you concerned about not only your children being addicted, but the health of your children?
Yes.
As far as, you know, abnormalities and whatnot?
Yeah, there's a kind of guilt that goes along with when you've used when you were pregnant.
How heavily were you addicted?
I was very heavily addicted. I used both heroin and cocaine with my pregnancies. My 3-year-old does suffer speech problems. She is not speaking as well as she could. They do not know if it was from the usage of my drugs or if it just happened, even though her motor skills are fine. By the grace of God, my children are beautiful physically, and mentally and emotionally, we still don't know.
What about you, Denise?
I used approximately $1,500 a month, maybe more. That's how heavy I was into using.
My goodness. And Jessica?
I used as much as I could every day.
Just as much as you could get every day?
As much as I could get.
All right. Now, how come they're sitting here talking to us now? I think we have a story that we might want to hear. We'll be right back. Okay, let's start with Jean. We are saying, why do they behave this way? And you're saying drug addicts don't behave rationally. Tell me.
They don't, because they're under the influence of a mind-changing drug. They become different people. When you talk to people that are on drugs, you are not talking to the people. You are talking to the drugs and the way they make them behave. So they do not do rational, sane things until we get them off of drugs, and then they get rational and sane.
Oh, I want to ask if any of the girls are married or planning marriage.
No.
No.
Okay.
Not planning or
We have, there are 3 here, Jean. What do they represent in terms of the entire country? What are we talking about with women and their pregnant? We're doing a show on this. Is this, I found 3 people and they're the only 3 in the country, or what's going on here?
No, we have a program for women and their children, and we have 25 beds and for women and 6 for children. We're one of 5 in the nation that addresses that issue.
But how many people have this problem?
Oh, I don't know. It's just, we're just beginning to look at it. The world is beginning to look at it. And I think that we need to look at it because these women have the future in their hands. They have babies. They have children. We do not address that issue in this country. These women want to be normal. They want their children to be normal. We do not have programs for them. I operate 2. One is funded by the county that I work in, and the other we're doing out of private donation because of the need. They're full.
Usually what happens to women like this before your program?
They stay on the street.
We have
stay
our
on the
children
street.
and lose our children. And
I'd like to stress that when I first started trying to get, going to a recovery home, a lot of them wouldn't take me.
Because you had children.
Because I was pregnant.
They didn't want us because they didn't know how to treat us.
And they didn't know how to treat a pregnant woman on drugs.
Huh. I don't understand this. Whether you're on drugs or not, you say that they're not thinking rationally, but anyone knows, any woman knows that sometime in their life, if they get pregnant, using any kind of drug is dangerous
and that's a
to
fact.
children. And you knew that before you started
No,
drugs.
this girl was 12 years old or 13 years old. Some of the women that we get into treatment, they started using drugs when they were that young, 8 and 9 years old. They don't know. We have to teach them how to open up a bank account, how to make their bed. We have to teach them some of the basic things about life because they did not learn it and they started using drugs early.
And I just think it's such a selfish act, and
It's
a shame that children are brought into this world. God knows what they're going to turn out to be. I just think it's a shame.
It is. And it's a shame that there weren't any programs out there when I was carrying my first 2 children. It's a shame that people don't know there's a problem. That's all very true. It is a shame, but it happens, and it's happening out there every day. I would say at least 1 out of 10 women that are pregnant and are using drugs. It is a very dangerous problem, and even if the help would have been there, I can't say I would have gone for it. Just because I thought I was an addict, I was always going to be addict, and there was no other way for me. I did not know that I could live life like normal people.
Question.
I'd like to know why you would in the first place at that tender age, supposedly, when you have families for support, that nobody supported you or did anything or cared about you.
They tried. They tried. I was sent to institutions, but that did not do it. They never gave me the message that I could survive.
Jean, what is the prognosis for these three women now? What's going to happen to them? We care.
Yeah, well, I hope that they will continue their program of recovery. I know that I have 31 years coming in November, so I believe that they can do it also.
Can they be all right? Can they earn a living?
Yes.
Can they support their babies?
Yes.
Can they keep their children?
Yes.
Can they make it as a single woman alone, no education, no background? and a former drug addict with a prison record
Yes,
as a call girl, they can make it?
Yes, I made it.
We'll take a break. This is Marche, and this is Adam. And I said, can you do it? Prison records, call girls, no money, alone, no guy to help you in the world. And you kept looking at me, Gene, and saying, yes, yes, yes. And I think the answer is that there's never so far that you can go that there isn't a road back. But there's something even more important, and that is that people, you're saying no, they have to. They have to. It's very imperative that people like you and people like me care and that we do what we can for them so that they can make that road back.
Some members of our audience will receive, and a promotional fee has been provided by...
Sponsored by the California Raisins. Visit your local supermarket for a chance to name the raisins and win a trip to Hollywood and Vine.